Alright, in this video I want to go over a issue that I often see when teams engage team fights. So I want to kind of specifically talk about engaging team fights, and I'm gonna let this fight here between Fnatic and G2 play through in the background so you can see kind of what happens, and then I'm going to quickly go over what happened and then talk about that issue that I was mentioning. So you can see here Fnatic tried to engage into the choke point. Kog'Maw can just flash out, and then Fnatic is in a bad position, and they end up losing a pretty important fight right before the dragon. That's gonna kind of determine who's gonna have a better chance at the soul, and obviously not only that, they do lose the mid tower, and kind of the game kind of flips from here. So yeah, that's pretty much kind of what happens in this fight. But the one thing I do want to, the one kind of more small detail that I want to look at is the way Caps kind of deals with this sort of engage from Fnatic. There's been a lot of talk about the draft in this series. I'm not going to talk about the draft, but I will say that obviously Fnatic don't have a lot of tools to engage this fight, which gives a lot of time for Kog'Maw here to make a decision. And he does have flash, and he is slowed, and he could flash it. He could flash now. He could flash when the Aphelios ultimate comes in. I think he could flash out of this ultimate. I'm not sure about the range, but I think he could flash here, right? I'm pretty sure he could flash away from this ultimate. He doesn't, and he also doesn't use his E up until the last second when he overlaps this his animation with the root from the Aphelios ultimate. So he is able to kind of overlap this animation and I guess save a little bit of time and still able to get his E out and slow Fnatic here, and then flashes at the last second before the Veigar stun comes in. Now you can say he was lucky, right? And obviously that's a definitely a possibility, because he did flash basically at the last second, and so if Veigar's a little bit closer at the start of the fight, Caps would have been stunned. So I'm not gonna say that he was 200 IQ and he was able to kind of calculate everything, and I'm not even gonna say that he did it on purpose because I'm not in his head, so I don't know what he's thinking. But I will say that I think you could give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was confident, at least in his team, that they can bail him out of whatever situation happens, whether he gets stunned or not. He does have the Lulu, he does have the Jarvan, the Azir, that have tools to help him out of that situation. So considering this is G2, this is Caps, I think you could say that at the very least he was confident enough to rely on his team, and because he did that, he was able to draw Fnatic in. Whether it was on purpose or not, I'm not gonna say, because I don't know. But he does that, he flashes away, and now Fnatic is in a pretty bad spot. And Perkz here has free time to do damage. Of course, the stopwatch here. This is, by the way, why stopwatch is so kind of strong in team fights, because it buys time. So Jarvan jumps in. By all accounts, Jarvan did what Silas and Tahm Kench did, and so he should be dead. But he does have stopwatch. They don't, and so he dies. They die and he lives. Tahm Kench dies, and Jarvan lives because he has stopwatch, so he could just press a button and live for 2 seconds, which is a lot of time in a team fight. And yeah, stopwatch is way too strong in team fights, but that's besides the point. Now the main point I want to make here is that this issue, while obviously the choke point makes it more apparent, I think this is a constant issue when you're engaging a team fight onto a single target, which is usually what you do when you're engaging a team fight. Whether it's a target or just a certain point in the team fight, you're obviously going to engage on a singular point. And so when you do that, let me use a different color here. When you do that, everyone is going to be converging onto the same point, and you're always going to get this funneling effect, and you're going to get players clumping up, especially when the distance is kind of so big. And so everyone's going to be clumping in. As you can see, we have 3 players here at the same on the same spot from Fnatic, and we're going to be clumping in because everyone is converging on the same point and using the shortest route possible to do so. And that's kind of the issue with engaging. because when you do that, you leave not you're clumping up, which is bad most of the time because you know AoE and other types of abilities, and also you're not controlling enough space, and that leaves open space for your opponent. So another possibility for this fight to go the way it could have gone is if Jarvan right here just stays here. So I'm gonna kind of draw the engage here. So this is kind of the engage. Whether the engage happens here or here, a little bit irrelevant for this point. But if Jarvan remains here, doesn't move, obviously he could be on a ward, you know, he doesn't know, but he could stay here. He has EQ, he has flash, he's safe. If they go onto him, then he obviously saves Kog'Maw, and he could just EQ away, flash away if he needed to. So if Jarvan stays here, Azir actually pulls up and away from the engage, so he doesn't move the same direction as the engage but moves away, and Kog'Maw kind of continues to move here. Now you would have Azir here, you would have Jarvan here, and you would have Kog'Maw here, right? And at that point Fnatic have obviously three options. They could continue engaging on the Kog'Maw, but then that would leave your backline, right? If that's your backline, and then you know the Lee Sin or the Sylas or both and the Tahm Kench try to kind of chase the Kog'Maw, that leaves this space and this space open, and then Jarvan and Azir could disrupt your backline one way or another. Now you can say, well, what if they just engage on the Azir, because the Azir kind of pulls away, he's alone, they engage on the Azir. Well, then you kind of get the same situation from a different angle, right? Again, this will be your backline here for Fnatic. Again, you have to kind of visualize the fact that, you know, whether Lee Sin or Sylas will commit some sort of abilities in this direction, and then when they commit abilities, you leave space open, right? And that's kind of the point I'm making. If they do the same to Jarvan, again, you get the same situation. Obviously, you know, it's a little bit different, and Kog'Maw, I think he can hit off the wall if he has his W up. So it's a very difficult fight and difficult engage when you're engaging into a singular point. Is kind of the point I'm trying to make. So to look at a few other examples, I have this fight again between Fnatic and OG this time. It's actually a very similar fight. Let me play it back a little bit further so you can see the actual engage. So it's actually a similar fight. Bwipo again comes in from behind. This time he's a little bit deeper, but he does end up collapsing that angle, and you end up again with the same situation where you have this stretching here and this clumping from Fnatic because they're all converging on the same point. And this time you do have Xerxes here, although he does come in a little bit late in my opinion. And you also had Nukeduck, who was here, and he had flash. I think he could have flashed here. Again, the concept here, the theory here is you're getting to the side of the engage, right? So if the engage is coming like this, and I guess technically it was coming like this, I'm gonna try to draw this a little bit better, but eventually it straightens out like this. If you flash or move away to the side of the engage, you open the angle onto the backline, because what follows the engage is the follow-up, which is the backline, right? So the front line engages usually, line is behind it, and if you move to the side of the engage, you open this angle onto the backline. And this will be good for the the Rumble, because you would have a better view of the fight, and so more likely to get a better ultimate. And then if he coordinates with Xerxes here, who also has flash, and he can tunnel, if he tunnel flashes, gets the knock up onto the Rumble ultimate, it could be really bad for Fnatic. Let this play through. It doesn't happen exactly like that, but Fnatic still end up losing this fight. Obviously, they're kind of behind. And another thing, Gragas, I'm not sure if he missed his ultimate or just didn't have a good opportunity to ultimate. He doesn't have flash. I'm not sure of the range on the Gragas ultimate, but you know, there's a few other things that went wrong. You know, that's not the only thing that was bad here, but you can see Aphelios doesn't do anything at this point, and still doesn't do anything. And at this point now he starts doing damage when, you know, Tahm is already tanking the turret. But the point remains, when you're engaging like this, you open space. And in my previous video on this channel about team fighting, I talked about kind of moving around. So if the engage is coming in, again, it's kind of the same concept. You move around the engage and you open this angle onto the backline. And that's kind of the point here with these engages. I have a few other examples. This is a little bit different because this is a little bit of a longer fight between Fnatic and G2. And I think you have 3 different engages here, and all 3 are kind of bad for the people who are engaging. Let me just okay. So you can see here Zac is engaging, and you get the same thing, right? And the backline is here. They need to follow up. Tom, I think, already flashed away, so they can't follow up. And again, this space is open for Fnatic if they were able to take it prior to obviously the engage. Now, again, the reason why it's open is because Zac has already used his E. Jarvan has used his EQ, I believe. He hasn't used his ultimate, which was good for Jankos, that he didn't overcommit here, but he still they still committed some abilities. And if you're able to kind of occupy the space as Fnatic without committing abilities, you have a pretty good advantage and pretty decent chance at actually having access to the backline. Now, Fnatic don't do that. I think I do want to showcase Selfmade here. I think he could have moved this way. Again, the theory is, the theory is moving to the side of the engage, so he could open this angle up. Obviously, Trundle's not going to have that much impact on the backline, but again, just occupying this space, I think is good if you do want to fight. And considering the teleport is coming in, we can assume that the call was made to fight. Now it's Fnatic's turn to engage, and you get the same thing. They engage onto the Jarvan, and you get the same situation. And now Fnatic is in a bad spot, and they did overcommit because they did use the Trundle ultimate and the own ultimate, and considering their team composition, that's overcommitment, right? Using Jarvan EQ and Zac E, I guess you can say that's overcommitment, but they still have, I guess, the ultimate, they still have Azir. So G2 is not necessarily overcommitting, and they can kind of back away as well. That's the positioning is a little bit different as well for G2. So I don't think you could say that G2 overcommitted, where you can say that Fnatic did, kind of overcommit here. And now that they did that, once again, now it's G2's turn, and they have the angle on Fnatic's backline here from Azir, and I'm gonna let this play through. Now this engage from G2 is a little bit better, and I'll explain why. Now again, the backline here in the face of Caps, Kog'Maw, is not able to follow this up. I should use the different color. Is not able to follow this up, but Azir is a little bit closer, and he can kind of present some sort of threat here. Not, he's not that threatening here. He's not able to do too much damage, but he's still able to present some sort of threat. So the difference here is we are engaging into what would be our follow-up, right? So that's the difference here, and that makes it for a little bit of a better engage when you have that follow-up closer to where you're engaging, because again, the engage is usually going to be longer. And obviously you need less lag between engage and follow-up. Now, Azir is able to do some damage to kind of, buy a little bit of time for Zac, I think. And then you get what we talked about previously. Now Fnatic switch, they're like, we're going to kill Zac because Zac and Azir are here, but you have the other angle, and Caps is kind of free to do damage to Trundle. And so having multiple angles in a team fight is actually really valuable. And that's easier to get when you're getting engaged on and when the opponent is engaging into you. Because if you have, let's say, 2 teams that are kind of evenly spread and kind of facing each other, when someone commits, again, we talked about it's a little bit easier to just move like this and then have multiple angles onto the enemy team, so you can kind of surround them, control a little bit more space around them. So that's kind of the main idea here, and I have more examples, by the way, of this happening. It has happened quite a lot. This time it's G2 chasing Qiyana here, and once again you kind of have the same situation here. They stretch out because the engage needs to kind of catch up to the person that they're trying to engage, which opens space for the rest of the Mad Lions here to attack the backline, and I think they're able to win this fight. And this time G2 has a little bit of a lead, and again, I'm not going to go too deep into the other factors of the fight, I'm just talking a little bit more about the way engages shape the fight. This is another engage, and this is a bit of a weird engage. This is kind of a bad engage from Mad Lions. There's just no follow-up here. So I'm not going to talk too much about the engage, but you can see the way G2 positioned here. This is where the engage is coming in, and then you have here and here. So I'll just draw the engage. They have position on the side of the engage. So if the engage is coming here, Jarvan here is able to threaten the backline, which is, I think, one of the reasons. There's a few other reasons, but one of the reasons that Mad Lions can't really commit to this engage, even though they actually end up committing to this engage a little bit later. But if they did commit to this engage, having that position here from Perkz and from Jankos, Jarvan and Rumble is really valuable to, again, at worst delay the follow-up, and at best cause a lot of issues for the follow-up and maybe even kill the backline. And now I think this fight is going to continue. It's a bit of a weird one. I don't think there's much else for this fight. This one is another interesting. Yep, this is it. So in this situation, actually I will need to go back a little bit so you can see Bwipo here on Malphite uses ultimate. Syndra is able to flash away, and now they need to kind of run because they're in a bad spot. And Sala is able to steal the ultimate. Now the issue here is, again, we are engaging. So what ends up happening is we are converging on the same point. This again is a choke point, which does help. It is a factor. I'm not saying it's not a factor, but anyway, it's choke point. MF gets an ultimate, and they are able to win the fight, even though Mad Lions is able to basically kill Nemesis without him doing anything in this fight. So you can see here Tristana dies, but Mad Lions is still losing this fight. So how do you fix this, at least in this situation? Because obviously every situation is different. Team fights in League are very different. So the way you fix this in this situation is, instead of all converging on the same point, you could have Renekton, who is considered obviously not a great team fighter, but if instead of doing this, he actually did this and moved, kind of kept the fight, didn't collapse the fight immediately, and moved this direction. I think he does have vision on MF. There's a ward here anyway, so yeah. Basically, as the fight comes in, do not collapse immediately, right? So if Renekton is moving this way, he would have access to the backline here, to Reckless, to the Misfortune. He does have flash, so he could, cover this distance a little bit quicker. And the other reason why you don't want to all come through the same angle when you're engaging is because of the damage is going to be going in that direction. And you can see here the barrel from Gragas comes in and actually delays the Renekton, which is part of the reason why Mad Lions are not able to push through. And that's why choke points are kind of hard, and whether it's a choke point or not, if you're coming in the same direction, all of the damage, all of the abilities of your opponent are going to be going in that direction. And if you had Renekton from here move away like this, he would be a little bit delayed, because obviously it's a bit of a longer path. I don't think it's that longer, but anyway, he could be a little bit late, but he still has flash, and again he will dodge all this damage coming in. And again, the fight would be a little bit different because Reckless would probably be able to see him, and maybe Reckless would move away. It will be a different fight, but I think it will be a better chance for Mad Lions to actually win this fight. And again, gold lead is here, and there's other factors, but that's one factor. Now here is kind of what I'm talking about. If I go back a little bit here, G2 here are on the blue side, so G2's base is that way. So it's Mad Lions here kind of committing to the tier 2 turret here. Watch Caps. This time Caps is not gonna come through here and do this, that we talked about. Instead, what he's gonna do is exactly what I mentioned here in the previous, where Renekton could have done this. He's going to kind of keep the shape of the fight for as long as possible, and that kind of puts him in a difficult position, but it's actually a better position than if he was coming through here. because that would allow for Mad Lions to all just throw their damage in the same direction. And you will see here the Mad Lions are gonna engage with the Nautilus, with the Leona, which I think does miss the E, but then the Nautilus sees Caps, he's coming from a different angle, and he uses his ultimate onto him instead of onto Perkz. And you can see how they have to spread their abilities and spread their damage, and also the communication and also kind of the way they react to the fight becomes a lot more difficult when you throw different angles at them. And if instead of Caps was coming through here, obviously, you know, he could get hit by the Nautilus ultimate, everyone could get hit by the Nautilus ultimate, it would be a lot harder for them to push through here, because all the damage from and all the abilities from Mad Lions could be going through the same direction. But because he doesn't do that, they're able to, I think they do win this fight. It's a bit close, and he still continues to do the same thing, by the way. He doesn't, you know, get behind the fight, you know, he doesn't follow the same direction of the fight, he cuts off Mad Lions. And again, this is a bit of a simple concept, but I just see the opposite happening way too often. And that's what this video is about. It's a bit long, so I'm gonna end it here. I think I kind of made my point. Basically, when you engage, you collapse your your positioning, and that leaves you vulnerable to certain types of angles. And in some situations, it's better to keep your shape as you're engaging for as long as possible until you could kind of time and coordinate your engages a little bit better. And so yeah, thanks for watching, and that's gonna be it.